Number 10. Fukushima. In March 2011, a powerful earthquake struck near the Japanese coast and was followed by a mega tsunami. The disaster heavily damaged the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant in Okuma. A nuclear meltdown ensued, and the nearly 100,000 people living within 18 miles of the disaster were evacuated. Only a handful of residents have been allowed to return to villages on the very outer reaches of the exclusion zone. 10 years later, cleanup at the power plant is still in its early stages, and radioactivity is still detectable in the water. Meanwhile, nature has reclaimed the residential areas nearby. In 2016, photographer Tetsuro Takehana traveled to Fukushima's so-called difficult-to-return-to zones. He captured eerie images of overgrown cars, parking lots, and buildings. In one athletic field, only the goalposts remain visible. Speaking with the Japanese newspaper Asahi Shimbun, Takehana said that it was as if time had stopped, and yet the grass and trees continue to grow. Soon enough, any sign that humans ever lived in the area will be buried beneath the thick foliage and the wild animals who have taken over. Number 9. Belitz Heilstätten Hospital. Would you be brave enough to explore a creepy abandoned hospital? Belitz Heilstätten Hospital was originally built as a tuberculosis sanatorium. Located southwest of Berlin, the enormous complex consisted of around 60 buildings that first opened their doors in 1898. At the time, it was the world's largest treatment center for tuberculosis and other lung diseases. During World War I, Belitz Heilstätten served as a field hospital. Adolf Hitler himself was admitted there in 1916 with a leg wound he incurred at the Battle of Somme. Ironically, the site became a field hospital for wounded Nazi soldiers serving under Hitler during World War II. Red Army forces occupied the property in 1945 as the war drew to a close. Belitz Heilstätten maintained a Soviet presence until 1994, when the last remaining personnel cleared out in the years following the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union. Parts of the complex are still used today, but most of those buildings are abandoned. They've become a popular tourist attraction and are occasionally used as movie sets. The decaying structure stands seemingly frozen in time, boasting a paradoxical mix of elegant architecture and haunting beauty, while serving as an eerie reminder of one of history's darkest chapters. They're mostly empty with the exception of a few items, including 2 pianos that were left behind. Number 8. TAMAN Festival. On the east coast of the Indonesian island of Bali, there's a theme park that never even opened for business before it was abandoned. The Indonesian government began building the park dubbed TAMAN Festival over 2 decades ago in the town of Sanur. They planned to turn it into a tourist hotspot with state-of-the-art attractions, including Bali's largest swimming pool, a 3D cinema, a laser show, an inverted roller coaster, and more. But the plans evidently changed, and after spending $100 million, the project was abandoned without explanation. There are numerous theories for why this happened, with most revolving around possible financial problems, poor decision-making, land disputes, and lightning damage that insurance refused to cover. While exploring abandoned sites is a popular activity in many cultures, Balinese legend holds that roaming spirits occupy left-behind structures and properties, so locals tend to avoid having anything to do with places like TAMAN Festival. In fact, the park is considered one of Bali's most haunted sites. Nature has almost completely taken over this graffiti-covered amusement park that never was. There's an empty alligator pit, and rumors about local farmers feeding their chickens to a group of the abandoned reptiles who eventually resorted to cannibalism and ate each other. Number 7. Rolling Acres Mall. Kids in the 80s and 90s would never believe it if we told them one day malls wouldn't be cool places to hang out. When online shopping came along, most Americans hopped on the bandwagon and never looked back. After all, unless you're in a hurry for something, why would you travel to a store when it could be yours with the click of a button? This convenient new way to shop had a devastating impact on shopping malls throughout the U.S., sparking an era known as the retail apocalypse. The Rolling Acres Mall in Akron, Ohio became one of the most famous ghost malls in the country. This poster child of the retail apocalypse grew increasingly empty over time as retailers who could no longer afford rent bailed. The mall finally closed in 2008 after a decade-long decline amid threats to cut off the electricity due to non-payment. A few department stores remained open, but they too eventually shuttered their doors. In 2013, JCPenney was the last company to leave. The shopping mall, which once housed 140 businesses, quickly became a dilapidated shell of its former self. Nature took over the parking lot, and the interior was plagued by everything from plant overgrowth to flooding. Snow fell through the broken skylights during the wintertime, covering the escalator and floor below. Naturally, the mall became a magnet for homeless people and deviants, and it came with major safety hazards to those who dared to enter. In 2011, a man was electrocuted while trying to steal copper wiring. Later that year, a murder victim was found on the property. Most of the rotting structure was demolished in 2016. Ironically, as if to mark the victory of online business over the shopping mall, the property is slated to become the site of a 700,000 square foot, 65,032 square meters Amazon fulfillment center. Talk about rubbing salt in the wound. Would you like to check out this abandoned mall? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. Poveglia. Located near Venice in northern Italy, Poveglia is a small island that first appeared on the historical record during the 5th century. It was inhabited until 1379, when residents fled warfare between Genoa and Venice. In 1776, Poveglia became a quarantine station for plague victims and people suffering from other contagious diseases. The site became a mental hospital in 1922 and has been vacant ever since the insane asylum closed in 1968. In recent years, efforts to turn Poveglia into a luxury vacation resort have failed. According to rumors, over half the soil on the island contains the remains of more than 160,000 sick people who died there. Archaeologists have found mass graves filled with thousands of plague victims on nearby islands, but they have yet to fully investigate Poveglia. Legend holds that a doctor who worked at the mental hospital tortured, killed, and butchered patients. These claims remain unsubstantiated, but they also haven't been disproven. Meanwhile, the hospital's ruins are slowly being reclaimed by nature. Many paranormal enthusiasts believe Poveglia is haunted and would love to explore it, but the island is off limits to visitors, and there's no word on if or when it'll open up to tourists. For now, adventurers with supernatural curiosities can visit the nearby island of San Servolo, where the remains of an insane asylum are preserved as a museum. Number 5. Buckner Building. Located on the western edge of Prince William Sound in Whittier, Alaska, the Composite Bachelor Housing Service and Recreation Center was built in 1953 to accommodate the Cold War-era housing and recreational needs of 1,000 American soldiers. It's better known as the Buckner Building and was once nicknamed the City Under One Roof. At 6 stories high, it was one of Alaska's tallest buildings for quite some time. Built by the Army Corps of Engineers, the 275,000 square foot, 25,548 meters squared structure contained everything someone would need and more under one roof. The amenities included a mess hall, sleeping quarters, movie theater, bowling alley, a small jail, and a series of tunnels connecting the building to other parts of Whittier. Strategically located near an all-weather railroad port and deep-water ocean terminal that stayed open year-round, the Buckner Building played a crucial role in supplying Alaska with military supplies. As an added bonus, the site's near-constant cloud cover protected it from potential airstrikes. The military pulled out of Whittier in 1966, and the building has changed hands several times since. At one point, there were plans to turn the site into a state prison, but they failed to pan out. The Buckner Building fell into disrepair under the ownership of the people of Whittier. Ever since, it's been caught in a cycle of freezing and thawing, and its broken doors and windows welcome the elements inside with open arms. The property went into foreclosure in 2016, but its future remains uncertain as local and state authorities grapple over what to do with it. In a bid to preserve history, the city would like to see the Buckner Building saved, but the Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation wants the structure demolished. Number 4. CARRIE Furnaces. Located along the Monongahela River near Pittsburgh, the CARRIE furnaces are disused blast furnaces that operated from 1907 to 1978 as part of the Homestead Steel Works. Standing at 92 feet, 28 meters tall, they're among the only surviving 20th century blast furnaces from before World War II. At its peak, Homestead Steel Works produced 1,000 to 1,250 tons of iron per day. Its glory days came to an end when the steel industry collapsed during the 70s and 80s. The lone structures that remain today stand in stark contrast to the once bustling post-industrial site. They're enclosed by train tracks and surrounded by wild plants. In 2006, the CARRIE furnaces became a National Historic Landmark. Anyone looking to take a step back in time can visit the CARRIE furnaces and learn about the prosperous days when Pittsburgh dominated the steel industry through guided tours that discuss the site's iron-making technology, workers, and culture. Number 3. Burj Al Babas. Halfway between Istanbul, Turkey's largest city, and its capital Ankara is an abandoned hillside settlement called Burj Al Babas. There you'll find 732 pristine-looking miniature castle-like chalets in various states of completion. Construction on the yet unfinished project began in 2014. The project was abandoned just 4 years later when the development company went bankrupt. All investors pulled out, and the future of the chalets remains uncertain. Over $200 million was invested in the project before it ground to a halt mid-construction. As a result, the settlement looks more like a dystopian nightmare than a neighborhood for wealthy homeowners. Each three-story chalet was planned to look identical on the outside, and buyers would have been able to customize the interior. Plans to finish the homes and to build a movie theater, Turkish bath, and sports facilities are on hold until further notice. At this point, it's looking like the builders and investors could possibly recoup or mitigate their losses at best, and that's if the project is ever completed. Number 2. Initiation Wells. Outside the civil parish of Sintra near the Portuguese coast, there's a whimsical estate called Quinta de Regaleira. The site bears hints of Gothic, Egyptian, Moorish, and Renaissance architecture featuring lakes, grottos, benches, fountains, and 2 particular structures known as the Initiation Wells. They never held water despite their name and were instead used as part of a mysterious ritual. The palace has changed hands numerous times, but it gained its unique flair after an eccentric Brazilian-Portuguese businessman named Carvalho Monteiro bought it from a wealthy merchant family in 1892. Monteiro adorned the property with Christian and pagan symbolism, and he also designed and built the Initiation Wells. He was deeply interested in the Knights Templar, a secret society that was reportedly disbanded over 7 centuries ago. Many people believe that modern organizations continue the group's traditions, and that Monteiro was a member of one. Some even think that the Knights Templar itself still exists covertly, keeping its activities extremely hush-hush. The ritual that took place at the Initiation Well supposedly required a participant to descend the structure's 9 staircases blindfolded while holding a blade near their heart. Then the individual had to blindly navigate their way through a dark labyrinth and cross through water and over some stones to reach the chapel where the Brotherhood would welcome them in. While these ceremonies no longer go on at the Initiation Wells, the site is open to the public and visitors can walk the same steps as new members of the mysterious clubs used to. Number 1. HALUDOVO Palace Hotel. The Croatian island of Krk is home to a crumbling, abandoned hotel that could perhaps be best described as resembling a decaying vintage sci-fi movie set. Built in 1971, the HALUDOVO Palace Hotel was once a luxury destination for vacationers in what was then Yugoslavia. Certain aspects of the crumbling structure, including its monolithic qualities, resemble typical communist architecture of the time. Shortly after the hotel opened, Penthouse magazine founder Bob Guccione became an unlikely diplomat of sorts. He invested $45 million in the property and expanded it to include a penthouse casino in hopes of encouraging better relations between the US and Yugoslavia. Of course, there was something in it for him: generous laws that allowed casino owners to withdraw money from the country tax-free. The ritzy resort attracted foreign tourists of high-ranking social status, including athletes, actors, and world leaders. But these glory days came to an abrupt end when war broke out in Yugoslavia in 1990 and drove away the high-end clientele that the HALUDOVO Palace Hotel depended on to stay afloat. The business closed and became a shelter for refugees. It then sat abandoned for years before Croatia gained its independence. By then it was decrepit, but several owners nevertheless attempted to revive it. The final guest stayed there in 2001. Skylights and windows are broken, the elevators are in disrepair, and the pool is empty and missing tiles. In addition to being an eyesore, the site is a safety hazard. Concrete is crumbling, metal fixtures are rusted and sharp, and chunks of broken glass are subject to fall onto someone at any given moment. Will the HALUDOVO Palace Hotel ever bounce back? Probably not. It's an utter disaster, and not to mention, its fixtures and style are completely outdated and bizarre according to modern tastes. Most investors see the cost of fixing the place up as far more than it's worth. Thanks for watching. Would you like to visit any of these creepy abandoned places? Which one? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. And we'll see you next time for another amazing video right here on American Eye.